Welcome, this is Lauren from NoteFull. So we want to take this moment to welcome you guys back. We had a holiday and now we're back and ready to go. It's 2015, so Happy New Year. The purpose of this video is not going to be to review your work today, but what we're actually going to do is give you some resources that you can use to start really planning your studies and plotting out your success, right? This can be very challenging for students, and so I hope this video gives you the resources that you need to get started in 2015 and moving towards that success that you will reach this year. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do when we're developing a study plan is we want to first identify our strengths and weaknesses. Some people may think that I'm weak in reading, and this is just a little bit too broad. Some people may say, well, I'm not very good at speaking, but this is, again, a little bit too broad. What we want to do and what we want to do to succeed, we want to really narrow it down to specific elements of those sections of the TOEFL. So in order to do that, what we're going to start with is creating checklists that are goal and strategy based. So for instance, if we're trying to improve our reading, which is very broad, we may take a practice test and determine that we have a couple of difficulties. We may determine that we struggle with time management. We may determine that we can't really work through the inference questions very well. Right? We want to make a checklist of all of the things that are important to pass the test or pass this section, and we want to be able to use that checklist as a guide so that we narrow down to very specific and meaningful skills. Now, once we have that checklist in place and once we start reviewing our work, we're going to use that checklist as a way to monitor our progress. When we, for instance, listen back to our speaking, we're not going to just say, oh, this was okay. We're going to say, it was not okay because I was not able to speak smoothly. I was not able to finish on time, and I didn't really cover all of the material. Right? That's how we're going to really make meaningful progress, by identifying specifically what is hurting our progress or our ability to succeed, and then turning that into action. So that's what part one is all about. So what does this look like? Basically, when we start off with a section, you're going to have a list of questions. Here you can see in this chart that we do have a pretty strong list of elements that will help us improve and succeed on the listening section. Okay, what you're going to see is the question I want to focus on just to show you and just to demonstrate is, do I take effective notes that help me answer the questions? This is a pretty common question we get, and definitely something that should be in a checklist if you develop one. So I'm going to say, no, I can't, right? I can't take effective notes, right? That's the answer in my checklist. So what do I do with that? I'm going to turn that into actionable steps. I'm going to turn this into some sort of activity that I'm going to complete. So let's take a look at what that might be. Okay, so for listening, for example, you're going to definitely need to have something to listen to, whether it's TOEFL practice or NoteFull practice or non-TOEFL NoteFull practice, just something that's completely different. You're definitely going to want to have something to listen to that is similar to the TOEFL. Could be academic, could be some sort of campus dialogue, right? But you definitely need some resources there. The next thing you're going to need, obviously, is a notebook and a pen, and you're going to practice, right? You're going to practice with that specific intention. You're going to practice taking notes that are effective for you, that help you understand the material, but also able to write down some details, right? Remember, the goal is to be able to take notes, effective notes that help us answer the question, right? And for those of you who have a NoteFull system, you're going to definitely see that this listening section is basically how we teach and how we strategize for our listening materials. So that's definitely something you're going to want to be observant of if you have a NoteFull listening system. Now let's take a look at writing, for example. This is a writing checklist. It's a little bit longer than a listening checklist because there's so many little details that we need to be sure that we're following for the writing. So for the question for this video, what I'm going to focus on is, do I save time to brainstorm and outline before I write my essay? And this is a really important question. Some of you are not doing this. Some of you are just going straight into the typing because you're worried about the time. But if you're not outlining, of course, you're going to have a really hard time getting started. You're going to type very slowly. You may not have good details, and it may go off topic. So that's why this could be very important. And when you're looking at your essays and you're just kind of reflecting back on how you performed in a real test condition setting, definitely you're going to see, or you'll be able to confirm, have you saved this time to do so? And until you're able to do it, you're going to want to work on some sort of activity with repetition. All right, so in our checklist, of course, we're going to say no, and we're going to look at what one of these kinds of activities might be. So for the writing, you'll know if you have a writing system, one of the things you'll want to do is use our 180 questions list, or any questions that you may have access to. You're going to want to set your timer for 3 minutes because this is a very specific period of time we teach in our strategies. The next thing you're going to want to do is get a piece of paper, pen, of course. You're going to want to brainstorm a little bit. So you see that there's a brainstorm cluster here. It's called a spider cluster chart. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to just kind of branch out these ideas, take notes, start developing some ideas. And then what you'll do is organize it into some formal outline. And all of this will be something you try to complete in 3 minutes. Now, how do we improve this? Again, don't practice a full writing test and expect to improve this one little skill just by practicing alone. What you want to do is keep looping this particular skill. You want to set your timer for 3 minutes, like I said, and keep doing that 3 minutes again and again with new questions so that you keep really repeating the skill and ability and you improve it over time. So that's really what this boils down to. It's using a question sheet. You're going to identify what your weaknesses are, and then you're going to turn that into action. So now let's talk about how we can put this into a schedule that makes sense for us. Okay, so a lot of students write in and ask, how many hours should I be studying? If you're a new NoteFull student or if you're new to the TOEFL, what you're going to want to do is start your student A, for example. Right? We recommend that students should be spending at the very least 10 hours a week. Some students aren't even putting in that much time, and that's not really very wise if you want to make dramatic improvements. Okay, so 10 hours at a minimum, 20 hours is our ideal spot, and 40 hours is for people who are really free, students who don't have a job yet, or anybody who doesn't have other commitments where they know they can commit 40 hours a week. So I've developed this for you guys so you know how to break down your time. If you're like student A who's brand new, you can spend about 2.5 hours per section. Just keep it even because you don't know where your weaknesses are yet. You're going to want to break up your time pretty evenly. Same thing for the 20-hour or 40-hour, but you'll see the time obviously increases based on the number of hours you have. So take notes here because this is really helpful. For student B, this is the kind of student who has been with NoteFull for a while, or the kind of student who is an experienced test taker. You're the type of student who's probably developed some really strong habits, and you may already actually be aware of what some of your problems are, and you may just need to really hammer those home. You may need to really focus on them. So we don't encourage you to forget about the other sections because that may mean that those scores do lower over time as well. You want to keep everything sharp. So do make sure that you're putting in a good amount of time for all sections, but putting in the most amount of time for your trouble areas, whatever they may be. So you can see I have it divided up here. 2 hours per section for a 10-hour student, but also an additional 2 hours for the skills or sections that are really problematic for you. Okay? And with more time, you obviously can add upon that. You can add more hours to that. So scheduling for success, this means that you need to identify your available study time first, right? If you have a job, if you have other commitments like family time, if you need to go pick up your kids, if you have classes you need to take, just make sure that you're putting all of this into your study plan. The next thing you do want to make sure is you're accounting for breaks and meals and sleeping time. A lot of students are unrealistic about their plans when they first get started. So just make sure that you have put those into your study plan as well. You're going to want to create a routine around those other things. So it may vary. Maybe Mondays you have no time. Maybe Sundays you are completely free, so you can do whatever you want. So base your schedule off of your own unique other commitments, whatever they may be. Now, this is a pretty broad schedule. It's something that I just wanted to put here as a model, and it's not meant for you to copy necessarily. It's just meant for you to get an idea of what your schedule may look like. So you can see I have Monday through Sunday, and I've only been able to go up to 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock to 3. So some of you may not have this kind of shift. Some of you may be working every day and then need to work on your TOEFL improvement and preparation in the evening. So everybody's different, and I just want to address that and make sure you're aware. This isn't for you necessarily to model, but for you to kind of get a sense of how you can set up your own schedule. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm taking the specific skills we developed and understood from our checklist, right? We didn't just pull these out of a hat. We're not just saying reading. We're saying reading test, okay? So the reading test is going to help us determine what the weak points are, right? Then we maybe determine that strategy of some kind is difficult. So the next set, we're going to be working on reading strategy. Right? And then after that, we may take a break, move on to time management. We're going to work on that. So we only focus on trying to look at the clock and manage our time for the reading. Right? So you can see it's all very specific and purposeful. So take a good look at this and pause it if you'd like. For those of you who are brand new to NoteFull, some of these things may be very familiar to you. But for some of you who are seasoned NoteFull test takers, then you're going to definitely recognize some of these skills. If you have any trouble at all locating these in your system, just make sure to let us know and we'll be glad to help. So last but not least, this is something that's kind of important, and I bring it up every time I teach about study scheduling and developing a good study plan because I think it's something that's overlooked. I really want to make sure that everybody knows that in addition to developing a good plan, you really need to control your space. Some students I know are parents, or some students live with other family members. It's really hard to get away from the distraction. But I just want to make sure you have some sort of strategy in place that will allow you to kind of carve out your own space. Separate yourself from your family if you can. Go to the library if that's comfortable for you. But make sure you have a sort of place that you like to go, that's comfortable, that you can control, that's free from distraction for the most part. That is, of course, unless you're trying to eliminate distraction. Some students like to study with distraction so that they get comfortable kind of studying at the test center, which often does have a lot of distraction. So I just want to make sure that you all have that in your minds as well. It's not just about when we study, but it's also about where we study and what are our environments like when we study, because sometimes chaotic environments really can hamper our success, can really harm us in our improvement. Okay? So with that said, we've finished our video for this week. Now next week we're going to be back on schedule with our videos as usual. So go ahead and take a look. Make sure that you click the link below to the forum and submit the work based off of whatever question was submitted today for both speaking and writing. Also, if you are new to the NoteFull YouTube videos, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like this video. I hope you did. I hope it was interesting and informative and helps you get started fresh for your new 2015, the year of your success. Good luck.